You knew the risks when you decided to drive drunk. There could be a crash. People could get hurt or killed. But that didn't stop you, did it? You knew you could get arrested. You could incur huge legal expenses, and you could possibly even lose your job. You were well aware of the consequences of driving drunk. But one thing's for sure. You were wrong when you said it was no big deal. Drive sober or get pulled over. This message brought to you by NHTSA.
Can you count on any Tampa running back this week? Is it time to give up on Corey Davis for this season? And what do you do with Kareem Hunt in the championship round? Plus, Jannet Thomas-Dodds, the second-place team owner in the Footballguys Players Championship, joins us to discuss why she likes Matthew Stafford over Carson Wentz in Week 14, what she's expecting to see from Josh Gordon the rest of the way, and much more. And the third-place team owner in the FFPC main event, Tom Wentzel, also drops in to break down the construction of his running back-heavy squad, whether Martavis Bryant makes for a good start this week, and more. We've got a great show for you. Dave Gerczak is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your FFPC Championship Round Week 1 episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour starts.
What more can I say? We top billing it, valiant without villain it, viciously found victory. Burn towns and villages, burning, looting, and pillaging. Murderers try to hurt us, we curse them and all that killing. I just want the bread and bologna bundles to tuck away. I don't work for free, I am barely giving up away. So tell begging Johnny and mommy to get the away. Yo, here's a gun, son, now run, get it the gut away. Live to shoot another day.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. It's the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Dave Gerczak. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for football analysis from the best fantasy players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Dave Gerczak.
Nobody
Thank you, Rob, and greetings and salutations, all you Balkaholics and Gerczak and addicts. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman, and my co-host is indeed the patron saint of fantasy football. He is the Dizzle, Dave Gerczak. Coming up on tonight's show, will Amari Cooper be a smart roll of the dice? What we think you should do with Kareem Hunt, and much more. Shout out to the chat room right now. Feel free to post any questions you might have in there. However, if you want to connect with us on Twitter, you can do so at HSFF Hour, at Eric Balkman, or at David Gerczak this evening. You can post on our Facebook page at facebook.com/HSFF Hour as well. If you want to chime in and talk with us, give us a call, 347-426-3682. That's 347-GAME-OVA. You can also email the show at the inbox at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us, now is the time to get them to us. Our producer, mutual friend Rob, and our audio engineer Bryce will get to all the chat room questions, tweets, and emails in the fantasy feedback segment later on in the show. That is my co-host, the Dizzle Dave Gerczak.
I was just asking about Rob. I was just thinking, Rob, how are you doing?
Yeah, Rob, he is nodding his head. He's loving life.
All right.
It's Christmas season. We had a lovely winter snowfall here today, really, in northeast Wisconsin. Just
like
a little,
half an inch.
little bit of a dusting, but it still counts. Did you break out the shovel, Dave?
I did not.
I can imagine.
We just drive over it for about an inch or so, inch and a half.
You always get those the kids that want to shovel your driveway, and you get like a quarter-inch of snow.
We don't get those kids around here.
Well, every so often we do.
Good.
I live in a slightly more affluent neighborhood than you do, Dave. So
I mean, I have to chip in with the other 19 people in my apartment building.
Well, that's see, you don't have to worry about shoveling at all. You know, and then when it comes to be like when it's like 2 feet of snow, they're nowhere to be seen. And then
so these young entrepreneurs, Balky, are trying to just earn a few extra bucks, and you literally kick them to the curb.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I wish they would kick my snow to the curb when I had 2 feet in the driveway.
$5, $10. What do you want? $20?
Well, it depends. Usually, it's to shovel the whole driveway, and I don't have a big driveway. It's $10, and then I got like a little walk. Well, I mean, if there's a ton of snow, the price goes up. Believe me, it's a sliding scale.
Why don't you book them for the season at like $12 or whatever, and say every snowfall, no matter what.
Right. Well, that's not really the way that I can't. They're not reliable. These are 10-year-old kids, and
write up the contract. and get it done, Balky.
You know what we did get done this week was the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. It was broadcast, rotoviz.com/podcast. Check it out right now. Two former FFPC main event champs. Tim Deneau, one half of Team TNT with his co-owner Tim Beaulieu. Tim Deneau was on the show, talked about what it was like in that nail-biting 2011 final. Dave, if you remember that night, you and I were watching the game, and you were actually, I believe, texting or calling with Tim. That was the night. It was Colston versus Matt Bryant.
I don't know if we were texting, but
maybe you were calling.
I think I called him after he won.
Yeah, because it was crazy because Colston got, well, he tells the whole story on there, but it was a lot of missed heartbeats during that night.
I love hearing those stories, actually.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So he talked about that. He talked about what you need to do as far as lineup setting for the championship round if you've never done it before. And then Nelson Sousa, we talked about the resurgence of Alex Smith, Alex Collins as well. Plenty of meaty goodness on that show. rotoviz.com/podcast. Check it out. We do have two guests tonight, Dave. We have Jannet Thomas-Dodds, the second-place team in the Footballguys Players Championship. And we also have the third-place team in the FFPC main event, Tom Wentzel. He is going to be calling in as well. So very exciting to have both of them on tonight. And without further ado...
Actually, before you do any more...
Okay, so a little bit more of ado.
Can you... is the chat room working for you? I can't get it open. I'm trying to... I like to hear myself type.
Yes.
If that makes any sense.
You posted a congratulations to Mint Montana.
I booted myself out.
And
you know what? I'll figure it out. You just get the guest in here.
All right.
I'll figure out how to make myself, sound good via chatting.
That sounds great. We want to bring in tonight's first guest. She is a grandmother who resides in the Dallas area. She was also the setter for the Texas Women's Senior Olympic Volleyball team and also played women's semi-pro fast-pitch softball.
That's awesome.
She is married to a wonderful man that totally understands and supports her love and participation in FFPC fantasy football. She currently sits over more than 7,000 other teams in second place of the 2017 Footballguys Players Championship. She is here to tell us about it. Please welcome into the show Jannet Thomas-Dodds. Jan, thanks so much for coming on tonight.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Well, I'm glad you're honored, and listen, we're honored to have you on the show, and I want to apologize for last week, the technical difficulties. We're just thrilled to have you on this week and pick your brain. Yeah, it was totally Rob's fault. But we get you on this week. We're very, very excited to talk.
Well, thank you so much, for having me. I do appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. Well, we want to talk fantasy football, but and I don't know if you are still among the working force down in Dallas or how you spend your time, but if you could tell us a little bit more about being the setter on the senior Olympic Texas volleyball team as well as semi-pro fast pitch softball. We'd love to hear about that too.
Okay, well, that's been a few years back, but yes, I did compete and was the setter and competed in the Senior Olympics. It was, once again, an honor for me to be able to do that. I played volleyball and coached it and refereed it, actually, for about 35 years, so very, very involved there. And then I played women's semi-pro fast pitch for a team that represented out of Kansas City. So I got to do a couple of fun things in my life, and I didn't start even playing sports till after I was married and a mother. So back in my day, they didn't really have women's sports, so that was kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, thank God for Title IX. Listen,
well, Balky didn't play sports in high school. He tried out. He was on the teams, but he never played.
That's actually true. I was on the teams.
Eric, you on the team.
Never saw the field.
Bring the water to the starters.
I poured a heck of a great glass of water for my teammates. I'll tell you that. And Jan, I'll tell you this: you're also joining the ranks tonight. The first grandmother we've ever had on this show in 6+ years of doing it.
That's pretty impressive, actually. So, hey, tell us actually, when did you start playing fantasy? Tell us when you started playing.
I actually started playing fantasy football about 2012. Okay, and I was in another league, and I just wasn't happy with the way some things were going in that. So I just started searching, and went out on the internet actually, and was looking for a league that had the format and Also, what can I say? The reliability that's been around, and it looks like they do things right. And that's how I found you and got in the FFPC, and I've been happy ever since.
That's excellent to hear. Fantastic.
I'm going to write that testimonial down.
Listen, you know what always makes me happy? Being in second place of the Footballguys Players Championship. That's awesome. So congrats on doing that, getting up that high already, Jan. I got to ask you, when you look back, your team is named Tiger 21, this team that's in second place. When you look back on this draft, or when you sort of thought about it, right after you had drafted the team, or maybe when you reflected upon it leading up to the season, what did you remember thinking about the squad at the time, like while you were drafting it right after? I mean, did you ever think that this team could be this good?
Well, I drew the third position in the draft, and obviously, David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell were first picks, and so I went with Antonio Brown, and I was concerned when it was over a little bit about my running backs. I thought, but I was very, very happy with the receivers and very happy with the tight end. I was able to get Travis Kelce, and so we know that's been a good pick. And then I had DeAndre Hopkins, and he's had some very, very good games for me.
Yeah, that definitely helps out when you get all those monsters in there. It's the thing of it is like you never know how high some of the ceilings of these studs are going to be. We knew what Kelce was capable of. I don't know if we thought that he was going to be this consistent this year. We knew what Hopkins was going to be capable of. I don't know if we expected this many awesome games this year with Tom Savage, and nobody saw what Deshaun Watson did. Nobody saw that coming, Dave. So I think like you look at these teams or these players on this team, a lot of high ceilings out there.
So I have a question for you. This is really interesting.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
I was just going to say I was actually able to get Deshaun Watson, through the waiver, but we all know what happened there, and I was a little bit concerned then about DeAndre Hopkins' numbers, but he's held it steady, and Tom Savage has done a pretty good job for me. So I'm very, very happy. And at the beginning I thought, running back could be a little bit of issue, but I think I have some strength. And the thing that I try to go for too is I try to get depth. If I can get consistency, and depth, then I feel like, at least I can compete.
And competing you are, for sure. Let's talk about the lineup this week, Dave.
Yeah, let's. I have a quarterback question for you. You currently have Matthew Stafford, who's questionable, and the quote, Caldwell, this great coach, says we'll see if Stafford plays.
When did he say that? When was that quote? Is that from today?
Yes, today at 10:48 a.m.
Okay.
He's progressing well. He's going to play, of course, but you're considering starting him over Carson Wentz at the Rams. We know that Rams have a really good defense, but Carson Wentz, he's been crushing it this year. Do you think you're going to keep it that way, or are you going to change it up?
Well, it's funny that you would ask that because, yes, I initially had done that, but later this afternoon I did actually switch and put Wentz in. But hey, I'm a woman, and I reserve that right to change my mind up to the last minute. My
you said that. We never said that.
But I did up until kickoff. I recently made the switch because I was worried about Stafford's injury. Now, I have been following his practices, and what, the coach said, and we'll see, and yada, yada. But, Stafford's so tough. I mean, he's one of the toughest players, really, in the NFL. And, if anybody can do it, Matt Stafford can. The thing that I like about Stafford is I really think that he has an opportunity for a huge game if he can play. But, can he play? And if he gets hit and taken down and that hand goes first quarter, that's kind of scary. Where I know Wentz is going against the tough Rams defense, and I kind of feel like, the Philly Rams games is probably going to be a lower scoring defensive battle. And I'm not saying it's going to be 7-3. That's not what I'm saying. But versus, going against Matthew Stafford, the Detroit game. But, the Tampa Bay Detroit game has a better chance to be a shootout where, the Philly the Philly Rams game could be a little bit lower scoring, and the opportunities for Wentz, I'm not sure, with the Rams defense. So it's a tough call, and I'll probably make that final decision just before kickoff. As I see how Stafford goes.
Sure, and it's interesting when you kind of blew off Coach Jim Caldwell's comments. So I
as many fantasy owners have done over the years.
But I mean, this is interesting to me. So as kind of as a grandmother, woman, you've been dealing with men your whole life. So you're just kind of used to men kind of talking out their ass all the time. So is that just how you're just like, well, this guy's full of crap, right? Is that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I just, I don't want to sound the wrong way, but. And I have utmost respect for, like, Bill Belichick. I mean, I think he's a great coach, but I'll believe it when I see it type thing. I wait. Really, Tom Brady or Amendola is, questionable, and may not play this week. You hear it all year long. So if a coach says we'll see, really, I mean – and I'll just continue to monitor his practice, see how he does, but then, you still have that little bit of I hate to say fear factor, but once again, I mean, anybody can get hurt at any time. I mean, look what happened to Kamara last night, but big bummer. But anyway, if he falls on that hand just wrong or whatever, will he still be able to grip the football? And I am concerned about him making the long passes downfield. I'm not so concerned about passes to the tight end or little short passes, but, it's just something that I will continue to monitor. And like I said, I may flip-flop it back and forth, till final kickoff.
Yeah, you definitely have time to do that, so we'll be paying attention to that as well. Let's talk about your draft as a whole here, because you look at how you got to second place overall, Jan. A lot of home runs that you hit in this draft. We already touched on Wentz. You just talked about Kamara that you have in this league. You also had Chris Thompson. You enjoyed the spoils of his performances throughout the season until he went down. And then you also have Robbie Anderson on this team, who's been very, very good, especially over the last month and a half. Out of those four guys, were you heavily targeting any of them in the draft? I mean, were you trying to get any of these guys, or do they just happen to be the best player available at the time in the draft?
Yeah, I was really wanting Kamara, okay. Really, I really wanted him, and I really wanted Robbie Anderson. I kind of had my eye on him early on. I have to admit I was shocked and was very happy, really, that they were still available in the 9th and 10th rounds consecutively, that, I couldn't pass them up there. And then talking about Wentz, I picked him up in the 14th round. I mean, I couldn't pass him up there. So best player available for that. And Chris Thompson, the same thing. But, basically Kamara and Robbie Anderson were my two targets.
Two pretty good targets, Dave. Kamara and Robbie Anderson.
I like how you pronounce Kamara's name.
All right, we don't need to get into the Kamara thing.
Kamara.
Yeah,
let's call the whole thing off, Jan.
There you go. But in the 9th and 10th rounds, I thought, golly, I better snag them. I didn't feel like I was reaching too far to get them in those rounds.
So let me ask you about a great player that I'm so happy is back in the NFL. Josh Gordon put up 12.5 points in his first game. He had, I think, 11 targets, 4 for 8.
It was insane. Yeah, it was 10 or 11.
Yeah, and did really well against a great pass defense. What do you think of him down the stretch? Do you think he's pretty much just back to normal, being a stud?
I am very impressed with Josh Gordon. He is, if he can keep it together here, he is such a gifted athlete. Oh, my gosh. I mean, I just am amazed at his talent. You were right. He was targeted 11 times last week, and honestly, he would have had 2 or 3 touchdowns, but Kaiser, overthrew him a little bit. It's going to take a little while, I think, to get that timing down, but you also have to remember last week they faced the Chargers defense, and their secondary has improved from what it was, the first few weeks of the season. And this week he's going against the Packers, which we all know their secondary is struggling. And so, yes, I expect to see his points go up. I'm going to be bold, and I could be wrong, but I would not be surprised to see him double his points this week.
Yeah.
You know, you look at Gordon, we're going to talk about this more in the show, but Devon House, Packers' #1 corner, listed as doubtful. He's probably not going to go. Packers' #2 corner, rookie Kevin King, who's made a lot of great plays this year, just placed on IR. Demarius Randall and Josh Hawkins will be the top 2 corners defending Corey Coleman and Josh Gordon this weekend. Could be a long day for that Packers.
Packers always hurt all the time. So irritating.
Yeah, I know it is frustrating. Jan, tell us what a typical Sunday is like for you. I mean, I know that you're following the games. Do you have all your live scoring on your phone or your computer up all the time? Is it just pretty much you tell your husband, look, starting at noon until 10 o'clock, don't talk to me. I'm all about my games. Is that how it is for you, or what's your typical Sunday?
He's baking at the time.
Well, you're being too generous, actually. I tell him starting at 10 a.m. I start watching, the shows and the latest injury reports and the actives and inactives, and if there's been any changes, I start so I can adjust if I need to. But yeah, and then after that, my Sundays are usually pretty busy. I can't watch all the games, but I avidly follow them on my phone or any computer. I mean, if I'm in the car, boom, 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 I'm on the phone, pulling FFPC up and seeing what my scores are. If I'm at someone's house, excuse me, can I use your computer, and go in there. And yes, I do. I just, I love it. And, I just, and I'm calculating all the time. So, yeah, and like I said, my husband's wonderful. He totally supports me, and he is learning all about it, too.
That's awesome.
That
is
totally great.
Get a husband-wife duo coming up here in the Football Guys Players Championship next year with Jan and her husband.
Let me ask you,
absolutely. Absolutely. Just look for John Dodds because
there you go.
He's going to be an up and coming star.
I love it.
Great.
Absolutely love it.
Coaching. Let me ask you a question about tight ends because we always have this tight end thing going on here in the FFPC, which makes the format's so awesome. Sorry, Bucky. So if you were let's ask you to help out some of your other championship round, mates, so to speak. If you own Greg Olsen and you were in the championship round, would you still be willing to trot him out there after all of his injury issues and kind of a not great start to the season? He's playing the Minnesota defense versus, let's say, someone like Ricky Seals-Jones or like a Charles Clay type.
Well, if my take on that is I would not personally not risk playing Greg Olsen this week, especially if I had another option. That's gonna weigh a lot on my decision. Who do I have? That I could do that would be somewhat comparable. But and the reason I say that I would not risk it is, once again, what you said. It's based on the matchup at Minnesota. Minnesota's only allowed approximately 10 points in PPR per game, and they're ranked 10th in allowing the fewest points to tight ends. And, so that would be a huge concern to me to put Olsen out there. Tremendous athlete. I know that. And the foot they're saying is good and, yada, yada. But given the matchup, if I had another viable option, I believe that I would not risk starting Greg Olsen.
Yeah, I actually have Olsen probably in like 4 or 5 leagues, and I've been very fortunate that I when he got hurt, I stumbled on some pretty good tight ends, and I'm not playing Olsen anywhere this week. He's on my bench everywhere, and maybe that'll be a different story in Week 15, but for this week, I am with you, Jan. I cannot trot Olsen out there. I want to get to a couple of emails here for you, or that came in for you this week, Janet. We have Ron in Southfield, Michigan. He writes, "What's up, Jan? Talk me off the ledge here, as I am considering starting awful Dak Prescott at the Giants in the FPC championship sprint over Derek Carr on the road in Kansas City without Amari Cooper." So he's in the Football Guys Players Championship round with you as well. And the question is Prescott, who's been struggling without Ezekiel Elliott on the road, facing a Giants defense that may have given up this season. And then his other option is Derek Carr, going into Arrowhead, facing Kansas City, going to have Michael Crabtree back off suspension. Don't know about Amari Cooper. If you were faced with that decision, Jan, which one would you be playing, Prescott or Carr?
Golly, tough decision. It's about a 50-50. Going in, let's see, Oakland's playing at Kansas City and Arrowhead. Tough place to play. The Chiefs have been struggling. We all know that, defensively and offensively. Kind of pulled out of it a little bit last week, but I think there's some issues there, but I feel like Andy Reid's addressing some of those, and the Chiefs could really come on very strong. And like I said, Arrowhead's a tough place to play in. Prescott, too, had the hand injury, but boy, did he look a lot better, last week. And I think the Cowboys are realizing that life goes on without Zeke Elliott, as great as he is. But, they got to pick themselves up by the bootstraps and go forward, and I think the Cowboys started to do that. Given the matchup against the Giants, I think I would probably lean towards starting Prescott.
David, if I was faced with this, I'd be playing Prescott over Derek Carr. Do you have a opinion on this?
I do have an opinion, actually. I think that Janet's analysis they're better than mine most of the time on the show.
So you're gonna.
I think that we should have a segment called The Grandmother, where she calls in every week or whatever.
I like it. That's not bad.
For 5-10 minutes. Whatever.
Yeah, see something like that.
Are you busy Friday nights? What are you doing Friday nights? You should call in all the time. What do you think, Balky?
Well,
line it up.
We'll talk about it. Call me later and we'll talk about it. But seriously,
right.
I appreciate the compliment.
We'll send you a contract on that too.
Yeah. Our people will talk to your people.
Okay.
I do have another email here from a fellow Texan, Jan. This is from Dwayne in Houston, Texas. He writes, I'm about at my wit's end with DeMarco Murray, and I don't have Derrick Henry. Should I bench Murray at Arizona in favor of Alex Collins at the Steelers? Thank you for the email, Dwayne in Houston, Texas. So he's got to make the decision. Is it DeMarco Murray or is it Alex Collins? Which one? Do you have a strong feeling here of which way you would go, Jan?
Golly, once again, tough thing. Let's see. Going against the Steelers is tougher. I mean, they really are. They can be tough. DeMarco Murray has underperformed all year, in my opinion, and I have him on a team, and I've only played him when I absolutely had to. He scares me a lot. Golly, this is a tough one, guys. I don't know. I probably would lean a little bit more towards Alex Collins, but once again, I would have to look at the matchup that DeMarco's going against, which I have not looked because I haven't considered starting him.
Yeah, that's good. That's because you have good teams.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great
Pardon?
point. Because you have great teams, you don't have DeMarco Murray on any of them.
DeMarco Murray, clogging your roster.
I've got him on one. And I think he's played one game all year for me. Yep. And I've only had to put him in on one game. So it just, the thing that scares me about Collins is, Pittsburgh can be pretty tough from time to time.
Yeah, it's going to be a definitely a tough physical game in that primetime matchup on Sunday night.
Shazier won't be. I mean, God bless him. I hope he gets healthy.
Right.
But, I mean, he won't be.
They'll be down one linebacker for sure. Yeah. I would actually go with Collins over DeMarco Murray here, Dave.
I would as well.
Yeah.
Collins has been strong. He's been scoring touchdowns.
Been looking very good. He had the migraines issue, but he was taken off the injury report today, so hopefully he's good to go.
He looks good. He's a good football
Not
player.
bad.
So, all right, last question, final one. Here we go. We need a stud player that you would consider benching and a sleeper that might find his way into your lineups this week.
Okay. Don't y'all laugh at this, okay? But
we will not.
In fact, I consider him a stud the last couple of weeks. Benching Latavius Murray. Now, Latavius Murray did great. I mean, he got me, 14 points last week, which is exactly what I needed out of just a stick-in running back. So that was good. And I had him in over Duke Johnson, which proved to be correct. But, he's been hot the last couple of weeks. But once again, you've got to look at the matchup. He's playing against Carolina. The Panthers' defense is a top 5 defense against the run. Therefore, I am not starting him.
I love
that.
That's great.
What about do you have a sleeper?
My sleeper? Oh, yeah. Blake Bortles. There actually are a couple out there this week, but what I have is Blake Bortles. Once again, the last couple of weeks he's put up really good numbers. The last couple of weeks he's been, quarterback one. That he's put up. He's also going against Seattle's secondary, which everybody knows it's all banged up. And he's also proved that he can run as well. And I think I was able to figure out that in the last 4 out of the last 5 games, he has at least 20 rushing yards, which is great. And, yeah, that's someone that I definitely, as a sleeper, that I would start. Mm-hmm.
I'm actually playing Blake Bortles in a Kentucky league this week, Dave. So I'm very excited to hear this. Yeah, I see that.
I mean, it's interesting. It's a really interesting. I love that, Jan. You actually gave a really good sleeper.
Yeah. That's
a really
very good. Yeah, and I hope you're right about it. 2.5-point favorites are the Jaguars, with Seattle flying cross country to face them. Jan, I would fly cross country to hang out with you on a Sunday to watch games. What a treat this has been tonight, hanging out with you, talking about fantasy football. Best of luck to you the rest of the way. I certainly I hope the ball bounces your way. Hopefully you can get past this Kamara thing and really make some serious money over the next couple of weeks. Thanks for joining the show, and we'll talk again soon.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a true joy.
Thanks so much. Jannet Thomas-Dodds, second place in the Footballguys Players Championship, heading into the championship round. Very awesome stuff.
I was kind of serious about the grandmother segment.
Yeah, we'll look into it.
Than I am.
We'll look into it.
It's really annoying because she's like totally prepared, Balky.
You're prepared every week, I'd like to think.
I'm kind of prepared.
I mean, I'm not checking your homework.
She knows like a lot of stuff.
Yeah, she does.
It's annoying.
We have our next guest coming up right around the corner. Before we get to him, I do want to let everybody know that it is back. The world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge is live, and you can register your teams today at myffpc.com. That's myffpc.com. Compete for a $100,000 grand prize in a $600,000 prize pool, paying all the way down to 550th place at a cost of only $200 per team. All you need to do is pick an FFPC roster of 10 players, choosing only one player per team in the playoffs. No roster management required. We've added more than $120,000 to the prize pool this season, as well as 150 more teams being paid out. Don't delay. Sign up today for the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge at myffpc.com. That's myffpc.com. Let me
ask you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Based on the 55th place?
No, 550th place, Dave.
That's impossible because like the competition in the industry is like in the 20s, 30s.
Something like that. I don't know.
So embarrassing.
Just focused on what we have.
If you look around, it's really embarrassing.
You know what? We are going to look around right now. Look around to the phone line and look at this. We have our next guest right up on the show tonight, on the blower, as the kids say. I want to introduce him. He's been playing fantasy football for more than 30 years, has competed in high-stakes fantasy football leagues since their inception, posting a number of championships and a couple of top 10 overall finishes along the way. He greets his friends with Merry Christmas every year. Not during the holiday season, mind you, but on the morning of the FFPC main event draft. Despite having suffered through nearly 50 years of near-miss misery as a purple-bleeding Vikings fan, he's completely convinced that, quote, this is their year, end quote. What better way for him to spend the Super Bowl being hosted in his own hometown than in Las Vegas, receiving a $250,000 check, and more importantly, the FFPC Helmet Trophy. Please welcome into the show Mr. Tom Wentzel. Tom, how's it going, man?
I'm great, guys. Thanks a lot for having me on, and what a great intro. Whoever wrote that is brilliant.
I would agree with that, and I think whoever wrote that is really flexing his muscle of his brilliance, being in third place in the FFPC main event right now. Congrats to you, my friend. Did you ever see this coming? Did you think this was possible when you're drafting this team?
I hope so. I usually like to, come out of the draft looking at my team and think about whether or not it's got a chance to go, deep. I looked at this roster and I really thought if things fell the way I was hoping they would, that I had a shot. I drafted Ezekiel Elliott 6th overall after everybody knew that he was going to be playing. So I think he fell a little bit deeper than he would in most leagues at that point. And then I kind of filled in with a lot of guys that I felt had a good mix of upside and high floors. And so I kind of thought if everything falls into place, I got a shot. And, here I am. And I don't know if I'll get there, but at least I have a chance. I'm in the hunt.
Yeah, definitely a better chance than a lot of people right now. Tom, before we get into some more in-depth fantasy football talk with you, tell the listeners what you do for a living.
Well, so I'm a little bit of a thrill seeker, as you might guess when you hear my profession. I actually started out my career as an actuary. So, all you people out there who have boring jobs, I know you're a little bit jealous. And I kind of morphed my career from becoming from the actuarial side of things into selling insurance. So if that's not exciting for you, I don't know what is.
That is awesome. So then subsequently,
how many energy drinks are you chugging in the morning? Just curiously, because this is Red Bull should get you for a spokesperson.
So then after you're selling insurance, now you're like a chief handicapper in Las Vegas, right? And you're like betting games all the time and going crazy and like counting cards and taking the house for a lot of money.
That's just my dream job. I'm not quite there yet.
That's the next job.
Listen, $250,000 will get you the seed to do that, my friend. Exactly.
So he lives in Las Vegas, and he was an actuary and sells insurance, which I guarantee means he's not at the Mirage.
Right. Yeah.
Shaking dice.
Well, it's not in Vegas. Vegas is.
It's not. He drafted in Vegas.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Yep.
Instead of me asking dumb questions, I'll ask a semi-smart one that someone else wrote. So you went deep at running back this year. You got Jordan Howard, Leonard Fournette, Mark Ingram. And you also had Ezekiel Elliott, like you mentioned, drafted 6th. Did you think that there was still a concern in your mind about Elliott getting suspended again at some point in the season?
It's a fair question. So when I drafted, it was September 9th. So that was the day after the news came out that Zeke was going to be playing. And if you remember at that point, they actually speculated that he may be playing the entire year. There's a decent chance of that happening. So I wasn't really all that worried about Zeke. One thing, the guys who know me well and have been in my leagues for many years, the one thing they'll say about me is I tend to draft unconventionally at times. I don't really go with the flow like other people draft, and so I kind of pride myself on that. So, I knew that after 6 rounds I had 4 running backs, which most guys wouldn't, but I also knew that with the FFPC format, I could start all 4 of them. And so it really kind of helped me just solidify that spot. I really didn't have to worry about running back the rest of the draft, and then I could kind of fill in the rest of the spots. So the Zeke thing really didn't play too much into my strategy. It was really just kind of, best player available at the point that I picked him. And if it turned out that I had 4 running backs, do a pretty good job of balancing the bye week. So I never – go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry, the audio cut out on me. So you finish up, and then I'll have a question for you.
No, the other thing, I got a little bit fortunate that the bye weeks all worked out as well. So when I was taking all 4 of them, I wasn't taking guys who had, doubled up on bye weeks. So I was able to start a minimum of 3 of them all year long.
Just real quick follow-up. Do you think I think it's kind of cool. This is kind of a statement, then a question. That you have Elliott coming back in week 16. Are you going to throw him right in there? I mean, you'll probably be one of the few people in the championship round that'll happen. Do you like that? Do you kind of like that idea of that happening?
I sure don't dislike it. I believe he'll be plugged right back into the lineup. I'd be shocked if they don't put him in, to finish out the season. So yeah, that's my plan right now, is that he'll be back in there in the starting lineup week 16.
Let's talk about T.Y. Hilton here with you, Tom, because there's some uncertainty surrounding Andrew Luck. Dave was, championing the potential of Luck being IR back on the show in July, and you made the investment with T.Y. Hilton. So I'm curious, did you? I just take me through your thought process on drafting him in this league, because he's still starting for you. He's still been a top 25 receiver. You can't really call him a bust because he has had some pretty massive games. You must have seen something in T.Y. Hilton, even with the possibility of Luck maybe not throwing him the ball for the entire season. In this case, literally the entire season.
Yeah. No. So another situation where. There's a little bit of uncertainty still at that point in time. The Colts had taken him off the PUP list, and, I knew he was going to be out for a period of time, but was hoping he wouldn't be out for the whole season at that point, obviously. But at the same time, wide receivers were really kind of flying off the board in our draft. There had been 19 receivers already taken by the time I took Hilton. So I looked at Hilton at the point I took him, which was second half of the 4th round. And at the number 20 overall receiver, I just thought it was pretty good value. And he was the second receiver I'd taken. I had taken Tyreek Hill in the third round. So I felt just in terms of value, it looked like a pretty good one there. I did a retrospective on the draft just recently, and the next 7 receivers that were taken after I took Hilton, the only one of those 7 that would have been a better pick was Devontae Adams. He was the next receiver taken after I took Hilton. But the other 6 have all either been disappointments or outright busts. So I at least feel pretty good about the fact that I've been able to use Hilton and that he hasn't been one of those guys taken in the 4th, 5th, 6th round that ultimately could sink a team.
So speaking of wide receivers, you have Josh Gordon on your team. Is that correct, Balky?
Yes.
All
well,
right.
not my team, but Tom has Josh Gordon.
Team?
Yes.
Is he related to T.Y. Hilton? I mean, if you were to look at it this week, you have Josh Gordon as a flyer kind of against Green Bay's atrocious defense. Or, you have T.Y. Hilton. Do you consider him kind of like a secret weapon? Are you deploying him this weekend? Are you going to wait for one more week? And then when he goes 10 for 180 and 3 touchdowns this week, are you going to be pissed off?
I'll be really, really happy because he is in my lineup this week.
Nice.
So,
I love it.
Yes.
That takes guts, baby.
Yeah, the reality is you're not going to win this thing unless you throw some big numbers up there. And I think Gordon's got the type of upside that, hopefully does carry a team, hopefully my team, to the championship. He looked good in his return last week. He got a lot of targets. He has a guy throwing to him that hopefully can at least get it close to him. But he's just an amazing talent, and I'm going to be trotting him out there hopefully each of these 3 weeks. The way my roster is constructed, I've got a couple of choices each week to make at the flex position, and I just look at Gordon's upside, and he's really the guy or one of the guys that I need to hopefully get me across the finish line.
Tom Wentzel is our guest tonight, our second guest here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, 3rd place in the FFPC main event. And Tom, you play against a former guest of the show, I believe might have been a guest co-host of the show. He's also been on the High Stakes Lowdown, Bob Riley.
Remember?
Well, I couldn't remember. I know he's been on the show. I can't remember if he co-hosted with me or not.
I missed about half the shows. So.
Oh, well, you are 50, being.
50.
Yeah, I don't know if it's quite 50%. Another FFPC player, Sanjeev Wadwa, among others. You play against. You've also co-owned very successful teams with Bob, high stakes teams before too. What kind of advantage do you think that you get when you're competing against these guys in your private high stakes league that maybe some other players don't get?
Well, really, there's no advantage. Those guys are all idiots. No, actually, they're not. But I had to say that only because I know they're going to listen to this at some point. So,
they're all sweating you.
They are sweating me. Although they I think have a few teams that are still active in this thing. So they're probably rooting for their own teams as well. No, they're great fantasy football players, fantasy football minds, and great friends as well. We all go to Vegas every year to do the draft, and it really is, an advantage to be able to prep with those guys. We also compete in leagues together, and they're always before, of course, the FFPC draft. So we don't mind sharing our secrets after we've already done our own drafts against each other. And it is great advanced prep. We bounce strategies off each other. We don't always agree on players, but it's good to get each other's insights, and sometimes, it will help me tip the scales in terms of who I might take if I'm looking at one guy versus another. So it's great to have those guys, and and if I don't win it, I hope one of them does.
Such good friends. I would never root for you, Dave. No, I'm just kidding. I would.
The best of friends usually hate each other,
right?
in some parts.
Hashtag frenemies.
So what's your opinion, speaking of frenemies, Martavis Bryant and Juju Smith-Schuster?
I don't know what the hell that's supposed to mean.
Brian has been talking some smack with Juju a number of weeks ago, but
they made up. They kissed and made up.
Luckily, the more classy person who is now suspended this week, Juju Smith-Schuster will not be playing, and the much more maligned and previously suspended Martavis Bryant, who Balky currently owns in a dynasty league.
Yeah, one dynasty league, yet I'm castigated for it over and over again.
Anyway, there might be a question here. What do you think about Bryant this week?
Well, it's funny because coming into the season, I was probably in a pretty small minority on Bryant, and I didn't like him at all. I didn't draft him on any of my teams, and it's
you were in
funny
that same minority.
Well, and the guys that you just mentioned, Bob Riley and Al and Sanj and some of the other guys were all, pretty high on him. I think they may have taken him on their teams. And so that was one of those situations where we just agreed to disagree. But you don't have to go back very far to find the last time they were playing without Juju. That was a couple of weeks ago, I think, against the Packers. And in that game, Bryant really didn't – he had a touchdown, but it wasn't like he was dominating the touches. I think he had 4 or 5 catches, not a lot of yards. So, if I had Bryant, and I didn't have a lot of other great options, I'd probably throw him out there this week, but I wouldn't be overly excited about him. I could very well be wrong. He might go blow up, but I'm not super excited.
Yeah, in that game that you were talking about, it was weird because that was one of the games. It seems like the Steelers have said probably on 4 or 5 different occasions this year, we're really going to work to get Martavis Bryant involved this week, and it never seemed to happen. But that game, I mean, the opportunity is there. No Smith-Schuster, and they really didn't use him. They leaned heavily on Brown and Bell, and there wasn't a whole lot for Bryant that week, and I expect that to be the same again this week.
22 targets for Brown this week.
Yeah, in the first half.
That's one of your little exaggerations. 20 targets is possible for that guy.
Let's keep it on the wide receiver tip here, Tom, and talk a little bit about Robbie Anderson, who's really been crushing it for owners. He's basically been a must-start for the last month and a half at a minimum. Does the fact that Aqib Talib comes back from suspension to probably cover him this week, and the fact that Anderson aggravated a hamstring issue on Thursday, and he practiced fully today, so it looks like it's behind him, but, I mean, there still is that concern with the hamstring. Do those two things give you pause on trotting him out there in your starting lineup, even though he's probably been a pretty big, not for you specifically, but for people who got to the championship round with Robbie Anderson, he was probably a pretty big reason they got there. If you owned him, would you be nervous at all with the injury and the Talib factor?
So, Aqib Talib, I just want to ask, are you yanking my chain?
We need a rim shot drop that we can play on this.
I warned my 17-year-old son that I might say that, and he's like, Dad, if you do, I'm not ever listening to you again on anything. So I guess this is my last ever interview. So, but anyway, appreciate you letting me throw that in there. Robbie Anderson's great. He's been great. He's had that 6-week run where he's gotten either 100 yards or a touchdown. I look at that Broncos defense, and they've got Harris, they've got Talib, but they're starting to look pretty vulnerable, and Anderson has kind of looked matchup proof in some ways. I mean, his streak has included, Marcus Peters, Desmond Trufant, Tre'Davious White. I mean, there's been some pretty good cornerbacks that he's been going up against, and he's still been able to put up those numbers. So I wouldn't be overly concerned about the matchup. I might be a little bit more concerned about the injury that you mentioned. Those just never bode well for wide receivers, and if he's not at 100%, then yeah, I think that might be a little bit of room for pause. But as far as I'm concerned, if unless I had a real obvious start ahead of him, I'd still be trotting him out there. I think he's proven himself to be a top 10 talent, and even with the Jets offense, they'll probably be playing from behind, so he'll probably continue to get more targets. So yeah, I'd probably play him.
Yeah, I think most people will be too. Dave, do you own Robbie Anderson anywhere this year?
I don't actually. Not that I dislike him or anything. I just didn't quite was a little slow on the uptake.
Yeah, I have him at a couple of spots. He's definitely going for me this weekend.
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about a team that's been terrible against the pass this year, the Dolphins. And Tom Brady won't have Robert Gronkowski because he speared that poor fella on the Bills. That was a really terrible
Tre'Davious White, yeah.
Yeah, so you have Brandon Cooks, who he over or underperforms. He never performs properly. He's like popcorn on your stove. He either gets overcooked and it's burnt to hell, or there's like a ton of kernels left.
You know what he is, Dave? He's the anti-Frank Gore.
He's the anti-Frank Gore. Frank Gore will get between 8 and 12 points every week.
And Brandon Cooks will get between 0 and 80, but never between 10 and 20.
And then you have Danny. I get hit once and I jog off the field every play. Amendola and Chris Hogan, who just returned to practice. So who's the big fantasy winner amongst the 3 players?
Another great question. I did a little bit of look back to see, what happens when Gronk doesn't play. And if you just look at their last game without Gronk, Brady just spreads the ball around so much. He had 300 yards passing that game. And I think Hogan had 8 for 74. Amendola had 8 for 77. Cooks had, I think, 5 for 85. James White had 7 for 57. So you look at that, and I think the answer is they're all going to probably do just fine. I don't know that any of them spikes. He even had – I was looking at Brady's game a couple of weeks ago when he had when they played the Dolphins that week, and he had 4 touchdown passes, but he only threw for 227 yards. He only threw the ball 28 times. But they ran for 200 yards. So I just don't know that anybody really spikes with Gronk being out. I think Brady spreads the ball around like he usually does, and I think they probably get the running game going. So I just don't know that I'm not saying I would bench any of those guys. I'd probably play any of them, but I don't know that any of them is going to emerge as a 25 or 30-point fantasy player this week.
Yeah, and keep in mind the Dion Lewis-Rexburg had James White. We'll throw him in their factor too. I mean, God knows what the Patriots are going to do this weekend, and I don't know if we can put our fingers on exactly what it's going to be. Let's get to a couple of emails for you, Tom, that came in this week. Tim in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I don't know what the hell kind of league he's playing in, but it's certainly not FFPC. I'll just read it. Big week for me as I'm trying to get to the playoffs. I already am flexing McCaffrey to go with Bell and Kamara, so I can only start Robbie Anderson or Jarvis Landry. Who do I bench? Good luck in the main event, Tom. That is Tim in Pittsburgh, PA. So he's flexing Christian McCaffrey at home against the Vikings. Okay, I get it, but you could probably lump him in here if you only had the opportunity to start one of these guys between McCaffrey at home against Minnesota, Robbie Anderson, the aforementioned Robbie Anderson, facing the now I lost it here. Robbie Anderson is facing the Broncos on the road, and then Jarvis Landry facing the Pittsburgh Steelers in Miami. He's got to bench one of those guys. Which guy are you benching, Tom? And thank you for the email, Tim.
Well, so I think Landry's playing the Patriots, right?
Correct.
So looking, I guess I'd look at a couple of things. One, I would probably play Landry for sure. I think you said it's a PPR league. Landry has been their number one target in terms of receptions, and he's turned into a touchdown guy this year too. So I would definitely play Landry, knowing that they're going to be playing from behind as well against the Patriots. As much as I'm a huge Vikings fan, and as much as I'd like to say, bench McCaffrey, I think McCaffrey's probably the guy that gets the most action for Carolina and probably could do the most damage to the Vikings. And given Anderson's, injury concern, I would say that of those three, I'd be benching Robbie Anderson.
Well, there you go. Let's get to another email here from Bill in San Francisco, California. Tom, would you play Lamar Miller hosting the Niners? I'm assuming Bill's a Niners fan. Or the suddenly relevant Kenyon Drake hosting the Pats. So he has to either play Lamar Miller at home against San Francisco or Kenyon Drake at home against New England. If you had to sit one of them, who's it going to be, Tom?
I'd probably lean towards playing Miller. Miller's been solid, and since Devontae Foreman's injury, I think, it puts that much more of a burden on him. Drake's been good. I think that they're going to be, again, behind and passing quite a bit. So Drake may get a little bit of that in the passing game, but I think between those two, I would definitely play Miller.
You agree with that, Dave? Play Miller over Kenyon Drake this week? Miller against the Niners, Drake against the Pats? Do you love the Drake or hate the Drake is what I'm asking.
I love the Drake.
You love the Drake!
I never liked Miller.
All right. Okay.
I
know you don't like Miller, but this is a really good matchup for him.
He's going to average 3.8 yards a carry instead of 3.6.
Listen, outside of the Niners, outside of the Niners inexplicably shutting down Jordan Howard, they've been terrible against the run this year. So
what did Lamar Miller have last week? Like 4 points or whatever?
I don't know. I'd have to look it up. I'd have to look it up.
I think Drake had 20 and change.
He crushed it last week. He was great.
Hugh, let's talk about the next question. I'm not going to look up Lamar Miller's stats. Give us a stud that you would actually consider benching this week. and a sleeper that might just find his way into your lineups?
Well, so I'm not sure how you define stud, but if I look at a guy who's a top 15 running back and who I happen to take in the second round, I am benching Jordan Howard this week, so I don't know if he still qualifies as a stud.
Sure, that works.
Yeah, that works.
Bench. You asked me if I was going to be starting Josh Gordon, and I'm starting Gordon and I'm starting Hilton alongside Landry and Tyreek Hill. So Jordan Howard is finding my bench this week. The last couple of weeks he's gained a total of 44 yards with no touchdowns, 3 catches. They're just not, they're not using him as much. He's not finding holes. And in this game, as they are in a lot of games, I'm guessing they're going to be playing from behind. The Bengals are actually pretty decent against the rush. Only 6 teams have given up fewer rushing touchdowns. And the Bears, their Vegas total, their implied total is only 16 points. So I just don't really see there being a ton of opportunity for Jordan Howard. So he's on my bench.
Yeah, makes sense. I think it would be hard for me to envision a scenario where I'd feel really good about Jordan Howard in Week 14 this week against Cincinnati. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Dave, by the way, Lamar Miller last week, 4 catches, 38 yards, and 56 rushing yards. That's not bad.
It's not bad, although let me just throw a few other quick stats at you.
All right, so yeah, throw them at me.
In 12 games? 12 games so far this season. He has never surpassed 75 rushing yards. Never gotten over 22 carries. He's scored a total of 3 rushing touchdowns.
Right.
31 catches for 309 yards, 3 touchdowns. And I look at that 169 fantasy points, and I look at that, and that sucks, right?
Okay.
He's RB12.
Yeah.
It's so disgusting.
Yeah,
the RB production is so terrible.
It is.
Zeke Elliott's, I think, just barely ahead of him, and he's been not even playing half the time.
Did you know who RB15 is this year? Eric Dickerson. I know, it shocked me too, but it is the lowest bar you've ever had to get over to be an RB12.
We were talking to Jannet earlier. We crapped all over DeMarco Murray. He's 16.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He's like, this guy sucks.
Hey, Tom, I want to, before I let you go, I do want to ask you one more question since you are a seasoned high-stakes vet and you've been through this song and dance before. For anybody who's maybe not familiar with the championship round, and they're worried about making a mistake or screwing things up, what's the one thing that over the next 3 weeks to make sure that they're getting the best bang for their buck for the
I guess my advice would be just don't overthink it. Go with who you think are going to score the most points. I hear guys talking about all the time, and I guess this matters more in head-to-head play, but, guys that are trying to figure out who their opponents are playing and based on that, who they ought to be playing. And the way I always approach it is I just look at my roster. I try to figure out who I truly believe is going to score the most points. If there's 2 guys that are close to each other, I'll pick the guy that I think has the most upside. And particularly in this format where, you're going to have to outscore, 250 or 300 teams to win it all. I mean, so you can't have even one bad week, and even really just 1 or 2 bad players in a given week can at least sink your chances of winning the whole thing. So, go with the guys you think are going to score the most, but if you've got a couple of choices, go with the guy with the high upside. So I mentioned earlier I'm going with T.Y. Hilton and Josh Gordon over guys like, Jordan Howard and Alfred Morris, for example. Those 2 guys are on my bench because even though I think they might do okay, I don't see them having the upside. So I'm going with the guys, like I said, when it's close, if I've got a decision to make, I'm going with the upside.
Definitely go with the upside. Now is the time of the year to get sexy, everyone. Pick those, get those sexy guys in your lineups right now. The guys with all that tantalizing upside. This is when you can win the money.
Amazing.
And maybe we'll have time.
Sexy upside guys.
Yes.
What is this, a gay show?
All right. This is. I'm trying to get myself out of it.
Nothing against gay people.
Tom Wentzel is going to be one of those guys that is going to hopefully cash some pretty big lineups at the end of the season with the FFPC. Tom, thanks so much for joining us this week. I certainly appreciate it. Good luck to not just your main event team that's right up there in 3rd place, but all of your teams this weekend. And who knows, maybe if the ball bounces your way, we'll be talking to you again after Week 16.
I'd sure like that. Thank you guys for having me on. It was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
He's the man. He's Tom Wentzel, ladies and gentlemen.
Tom.
Yes, Tom.
Tom is great.
Yes. What were you going to say?
I thought you were referring to me.
Oh, no, you're definitely not the man. I don't know what you are, but
The woman.
you're not the woman either. That's why scientists
Women
are still
are
trying to
much
figure it out.
respected to be in my category.
I was going to bring this up. I might turn this into a tweet.
I'm sure it'll be terrible and get no retweets.
We're over. Why would you even say something like that?
I'm kind of mean tonight. I don't know what my problem is.
I was over at my folks' house tonight because it was my mother's birthday. I would tell you it was her birthday on Wednesday. We're celebrating tonight.
That's nice. Your family visits.
Yes. And my kids were along, and for whatever reason, I downloaded a song like this summer. It's The House of the Rising Sun by the Animals. It's an old song from the 60s. There is a house in New Orleans they call the Rising Sun. You know that one?
Sure.
So the heavy metal group Five Finger Death Punch covered this song, and I really liked that version, so I downloaded it. Mm-hmm. And I had to pick my son up, who's 4, and I had to bring him somewhere, and I had that song in the car. I just ran in. I left the car running. I ran in to get him, and then he's like, "Oh, what is this?" I'm like, "Oh, actually, this is a song," and I told him, and I was like, Daddy actually saw these guys at Rock USA. And Lucas doesn't call it a rock concert; he calls it a rocket concert.
Nice.
And so
your son's very funny.
Every time whenever he rides with me, he always wants to listen to this song, and it has to be played super loud.
Of course.
We listened to it on the way home from my parents tonight. We listened to that song 7 times in a row, and my wife would turn it down so she could talk to our daughter, and then Lucas, turn it up.
Yeah.
I get a notification on my phone because I was playing it through my phone. And then, when you get a notification on your iPhone, the sound kind of dies off. Right. And then he'd be like, turn it up! Yeah. So, and he loved it. I don't know what,
House of the Rising Sun?
House of the Rising Sun by Five Finger Death Punch.
Your son's kind of an alpha.
Maybe. Two-packer in the...
I think he's an alpha male.
He might be.
That's pretty good.
Two-packer in the chat room says that he likes the Five Finger Death Punch version of House of the Rising Sun better than the Animals, and he says he tweeted the bass player about that specific song as he boarded a plane in Milwaukee heading out to Vegas for the FFPC live events, and that bass player liked it and retweeted it. So it's a small world we live in, Dave.
Nice,
a very small world. We're going to have a bit of an abbreviated show if anybody's been paying attention to the clock. Yes, we had 2 guests on, and we're already an hour into it, so I don't want to take up too much more time. Let's do some news and a few emails, and then we'll call it a night. Thanks to Football Guys, RotoPass, RotoWorld, and Rob for tonight's rundown. Rob Gronkowski did indeed lose the appeal of his suspension. Be out for this week. Martellus Bennett's on injured reserve.
I'm not going to play him.
Thank you.
I'm going to bench Rob Gronkowski.
Dwayne Allen, Jacob Hollister are on nobody's teams, I don't think. Maybe Dwayne Allen in a couple of places. They play on Monday Night Football. If you have Gronk, you basically, hopefully, David Hubbard, and I apologize if I'm making fun of his accent, but we were talking about this in the High Stakes Lowdown a couple weeks ago.
Apologize.
And I said that we were, what's your championship round advice, for building your roster, or what roster you're taking in these final 3 weeks? And he's like, well, don't go naked at quarterback, don't go naked at tight end, don't go naked at kicker. Naked is what he was saying.
Right.
And for those people who did go naked with Gronk, which, I mean, honestly, that is usually a hell of a weekend in a yacht in the Bahamas.
Yeah, $5-6 grand.
But exactly. But now you're kind of screwed, and I don't know what you do. This is why you take another tight end. I don't know if there's any fantasy analysis. We kind of talked with Tom about this. I don't think that you can start. I mean, I'm starting Cooks in all my leagues just because of where I picked him. But I don't have any kind of confidence in Amendola. And Hogan finally coming back from this long stay on the inactive list, I'm not really feeling great about him. He might not even play Monday night.
So you're talking about Patriots players to start, or you're talking about tight ends to sub in for Gronk?
No, not tight ends, because you're basically screwed at that point.
Well, you know what, Balky? If you're in dynasty leagues and you have Gronk, there's one solution to this.
Yeah.
Have a good enough rest of your team that you're on a bye week this week.
Yeah, all right.
That's the way to handle it.
Go ahead.
No. Don't have to play this week. I'm not going to talk about my teams that have Gronk, but I'm pretty happy with them. Let me just say I'm not too worried about Gronk not playing. I would actually take a look at Danny Amendola this week if I had to for the Patriots. Obviously you're going to play Cooks.
Jordan Renan from ESPN reports that Eli Manning is expected to start against the Cowboys. Ben McAdoo and Jerry Reese are out in New York, so they will go back to Eli Manning just trying to get the season over. Now, Eli Manning may not
That's just kind of funny.
May not be in a Giants uniform next year. We actually talked about this on the Appleton Trophy Fantasy Football Show that you can hear on thescorewi.com at 5 o'clock every Thursday night. AM 1570, 95.3 FM.
I really appreciate you telling us the time.
Eli Manning, next year maybe.
What's the website, though?
Maybe in Jacksonville.
Where's the website?
TheScoreWI.com.
That's pretty good.
Eli Manning maybe in Jacksonville next year.
Why?
We also talked about why
Bortles,
not.
Bortles isn't even worse than Manning.
Well, I
Is
think
Bortles' contract up?
yes.
Completely.
Because
like no renewal.
because they declined his option, so there is no fifth-year option for him. So he is a free agent. They can move on.
Who wants these retreads? Why would someone want Manning?
We also talked about
Why?
Brett Hundley playing in Cleveland this week. Cleveland needs a quarterback. Think Hundley would go there? That they would
Why?
trade for Hundley?
No.
I suppose now that
They have so many picks.
they fired Sashi Brown, so now you have John Dorsey in there too.
Of course, you fire Sashi Brown because he has 2 first-round picks and 3 second
3
round.
seconds, yeah.
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
This guy, the whole point was to tear the team down.
Yeah.
And they give him 2 years to do it.
And now they're going to have the old retreads come in and muck it up.
Yeah, it's like the worst.
It is the worst. Amari Cooper, present at the start of Friday practice. This is kind of big. This is according to Michael Gelkin on Twitter. It's the first time Cooper's been on the practice field since he had the concussion and high ankle sprain in Week 12 against Denver. Cooper has, in fact, cleared the concussion protocol, so it is this ankle that is bothering him. It could be a high ankle sprain. He did get listed as questionable, Dave. I don't have any kind of confidence in playing Amari Cooper this week. I am desperate for receivers in a league that I own Amari Cooper in. Not playing him.
What the hell does present mean at the start of the practice?
Because
practice or not practice?
Right. Well, remember, reporters, the media cannot see the entire practice all the time. Sometimes there's portions closed off to the media.
So, I mean, I think if Cooper's active, I'm going to play him unless I have really, really strong options.
Boy, I don't know, man.
I mean, regardless of the fact that I pawned him off on Ron Meyer and just made a fantastic trade in Dynasty to get rid of Amari Cooper, I mean, I'm so happy about it. Let me just tell you, I think Cooper's still a pretty talented player, and I think I'd play him if I had the opportunity.
Quick, would you rather Amari Cooper or D.D. Westbrook this week if Cooper's active?
Cooper, for sure, over Westbrook.
Who is heavily limping yesterday, by the way.
Who?
Cooper.
Antonio Brown was limping in pregame.
Antonio Brown's not human, so don't bring him up in the same breath as Amari Cooper.
A pedigreed top 7 overall pick
that you were
from
just,
Alabama.
That you were just bragging about pawning him off in a dynasty.
Well, regardless.
It's amazing the corners of both sides of your mouth just flapping all over the place.
Cook, which is a phenomenal player from the wonderful University of Florida State, where everyone graduates with highest honors. Summa cum laude, in fact.
Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times reported that Doug Martin, who was out with a concussion, is expected to start Week 14 against the Lions. Dirk Ketter reportedly does not believe in players losing their role as a result of an injury.
By the way, can I interrupt you?
Go ahead, because I think you're going to make the same joke as me.
Was it about Chad Schrader's tweet?
No, it was not.
Chad Schrader, one of the best fantasy players in the country. Does it also mean players don't lose their job when they suck?
Yeah, that was my joke that I was going to make.
But Chad said it on Twitter. So.
Chad Schroeder, by the way, I don't know if you heard the Roto Underworld podcast with Matt Kelly. He had Chad Schroeder on.
Did he?
Yeah, he had him
that
on
was
a week or two ago. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Really good stuff from those two guys. Peyton Barber coming off a 143-yard game against the Green Bay Packers, who, say what you will about their defense, but their rush defense has actually been really good this year, probably because you can just pass on them all day. But you look at what Barber did, the fact that Martin's coming back, I think this is we cannot assume rational coaching here, and I cannot play Martin or Barber this week.
I agree with you, actually. I don't have any confidence in Martin to get a good game in there. And unfortunately, the coach abandoned Barber.
Joe Mixon is out this week, Week 14 against the Bears. Giovanni Bernard is getting the start, Dave. I don't know how many teams carried Bernard, but he's going to get the start against the Bears. And he's not a bad start this week, in my opinion. With the running back depth in Cincinnati is as bare as some teams went in to the championship round at quarterback, tight end, and kicker.
It went from totally chic to totally geek.
Yeah. So, but the fact is, Bernard playing against the Bears, it's not a terrible matchup. It's not a great one, but he's gonna get all the volume.
It's totally fine. Bernard's well recovered from the injury. Frankly, I never understood why Mixon was drafted in the first place. I thought Bernard would have been a capable PPR quality type back. I know they don't like Jeremy Hill. I think Bernard's a good player. I mean, you're gonna get catches. I mean, I think he's great. He could have a really big week, like a 20-point week.
Yeah, definitely. I have my own conspiracy theory on why the Bengals selected Joe Mixon.
They're also people who have personal issues? Or?
Yeah, I think the Bengals saw that he had character issues, and they made him. They moved him up their board and decided that they were going to go ahead and grab him.
I actually buy that.
In Kentucky auction this week, have an interesting decision. I had been playing Joe Mixon as my flex, and I don't think I'm going to be able to do that this week since he is out.
Right.
So the question comes down to either, I'll ask you this. I'm not going to tell you who I have in there.
All right.
It's either going to be Duke Johnson at home against the Packers or Sammy Watkins at home against the Eagles.
Oh, man, Sammy Watt's so inconsistent. Johnson had a bad week last week. If I felt the team was pretty strong, I'd probably throw Duke Johnson in there. If I really wanted the possibility of a big week, I'd throw Watkins in. But Watkins so rarely has a big week, I'd probably look for Duke Johnson myself.
Coming into this week, we had an 83-point lead over second place in the sprint.
Then Johnson for sure, 100%.
We did have Kamara in this league.
Well, it's, so you lost expected 20 points or so.
Okay. So you're still Johnson?
I'm still Johnson.
So you're starting Duke Johnson over a guy who has scored 4 touchdowns in the last 5 games.
I guess I am.
All right, I'll have to rethink that.
Well,
then.
I mean,
No, I you know how much I don't like Sammy Watkins, and I didn't even have to think very hard about it.
Well, I didn't check any. Did you check any of the rankings, the sites, whatever?
No, not really. I guess I can. I probably should. I usually save the checking of the rankings till later in the week.
I mean, I can do it while we're on the show, for God's sake.
Go ahead, and I'll answer this email. Walton, Damascus, Maryland. I'm not sure this is good, but I have to pair Le'Veon Bell with either Dion Lewis or Rex Burkhead. Which do you guys prefer to start? Thanks. That's Walton, Damascus, Maryland. Doesn't matter who they're playing because they're on the same team. It is the Dolphins on the road. For me, Dave, I would actually lean towards Rex Burkhead over Dion Lewis here. Dion Lewis missed practice today because of an illness. I mean, he'll probably still be fine. They play Monday night, and you'll have the opportunity to wait until Monday night to make this decision. I'm playing Burkhead. He's white hot right now.
What is that supposed to mean?
I didn't think about that.
He's a white running back, Balky. Get with it.
We said that.
I'll play Burkhead. You know what? And it's not because he's white, unlike you.
Well,
I'm not racist.
Yeah.
I like white people, black people. They're all the same.
Get it all out.
But I'll still start Burkhead just because he's playing a little bit better.
Right.
Not because of his race.
Well, I was, just stream of consciousness on the lowdown this week. We were talking with Tim Deneau, and I was talking to him about this Patriots running back situation. Deneau lives in the backyard of Patriots Nation out in Massachusetts.
Right. He's a Bostonian.
Yeah, and so we were talking to him about it, and he said, we looked at it from more of a championship round perspective, and he said, it's going to get colder there. Rex Burkhead is the type of guy that you want.
That's a good point.
And I said, yeah, and just I want the guy playing in cold weather and snow. Just the name Rex Burkhead sounds like a great cold weather. And I said,
it's like the name of a dog.
What's more snowy and wintry? What's a more snowy and wintry name than Rex Burkhead? And I was like, well, maybe James White, who's also on that roster, White Snow. But yeah, we both agreed on Burkhead there.
James White, who is black.
Who is black? He's black like Barry White is.
Okay, Duke Johnson. Sorry, football guys.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to give away too much confidential data.
That's fine. We can give a little bit.
But they have Duke Johnson with 0.2 more points for him over Watkins, 11 to 10.8.
Oh, so it's very close there. Okay.
Draft Sharks actually goes the other direction and gives Sammy Watt 10.4 and Johnson 9.10.
You've always loved Sammy Watkins, though.
So they're a little bit higher. But it's pretty equivalent. But, I mean, if you have a lead, I think you just take those 10 points easy.
Okay.
Sammy Watt could get a 2 for 20.
I'll say this, too. Green Bay.
Duke could score.
Green Bay has given up the 6th most fantasy points to running backs this season.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So, okay. Chuck in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Hey, it's the Massachusetts show.
Man.
Cambridge? I thought that was in England.
Well, they pronounce it the same.
Oh, I didn't. I thought it was different. I thought it was Cambridge and
Cambridge?
Yeah, Cambridge, Massachusetts,
Maybe
and
Cambridge.
I thought it was.
Let me check.
Could be wrong.
I didn't go to Harvard.
Hey, Bryce, you know everything. What? How do they pronounce it?
Bryce claims he got a 35 on his ACT. Bryce,
he's shrugging his shoulders.
You don't even know that.
With my waiver wire.
By the way, Bryce does own 2.4 Bitcoin. By the way.
Yeah, let's not go
it's
down.
It's worth a lot of money.
Let's not get down that rabbit hole this late into the show. With my waiver wire closing for the season soon, I have to figure out which guy to drop for a second kicker. I've narrowed it down to James Conner, Corey Davis, or Josh Gordon. Which one should I let go, or should I roll the dice with one kicker? That is Chuck in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Thanks for the email, Chuck. You are not cutting Josh Gordon.
No, of course not.
Now, James Conner is interesting because if Bell goes down, Conner could be interesting.
I would be willing to cut Conner for a second kicker.
You would keep Corey Davis.
Yeah.
Rashard Matthews coming back this week.
Is he the sixth wide receiver? What was he at? What was he at for wideout?
He doesn't.
I would cut Corey. I don't know.
You're keeping Connor over Davis.
If I have no need for him, yeah.
Connor could be money though. That's the thing. One Bell knee injury, and all of a sudden Connor's into 25 touches a game.
And Bell hasn't gotten hurt, but he does get hurt.
What's Corey Davis' ceiling? Honestly.
Well, in 2 years, it's a lot, but right now, not so much.
Not so much. I'm cutting Davis for a second kicker. Final email. Hey, Dave and Balky, can you guys shed any light on what's going on with Kareem Hunt? I can't put my finger on it, but is this guy simply wearing down, or was he never as good as what he was in the first month of the season to begin with? Go Buckeyes. That's Joe in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you for the email, Joe. Good luck to your Buckeyes facing USC in whatever bowl game that is. So, okay, Kareem Hunt, Dave. What in the hell is going on? This guy looked like a world beater the first 5-6 weeks of the season. He's been a shell of his former self since then. And think about all these teams that got off the hot starts, won their leagues, or maybe won their playoffs in the FPC in the main event, and they have to make a decision in the championship round for all the marbles. Do you play Kareem Hunt this week? I am on Team Hunt, for whatever it's worth.
I mean, if I have better options, I would consider someone else. I mean, I guess it really depends on who you have. I mean, what is he getting, like 10 points, 13 points?
Hasn't been great. Are you bringing it up right now? I'm not going to look.
Yeah,
okay.
He's gotten he has not scored more than 10.7 points. I know that's a weird, arbitrary number.
Right.
Since week 8. Week 8, 9.8, 10.10 bye week, 10.7, 3.6, and 9.3. I'm looking elsewhere if I can. I mean, I think it's okay.
Kareem Hunt or Carlos Hyde?
Who's Hyde playing again? They're playing
at Houston.
Hyde. Why can't I find? Oh, Hyde for sure.
Kareem Hunt or
Rex. Hyde's only, go ahead.
Kareem Hunt or Rex Burkhead.
I would actually start Burkhead.
Wow.
Weird.
Okay. Kareem Hunt or Jamal Williams.
Against Cleveland, I would start Jamal Williams.
Kareem Hunt or Deion Lewis at the Dolphins.
I would start Hunt.
Okay, so now we're finding it here. Kareem Hunt or your favorite whipping boy, Marshawn Lynch in Arrowhead.
I don't trust Lynch at all. He's going to go off and have a Snickers or whatever candy bar he likes.
Skittles. It's Skittles.
Same thing. Not really. I'm going to go with Hunt there. I don't like Lynch.
Kareem Hunt or Samaje Perine at the Chargers.
No Perine. Perine's not talented enough.
I know what your answer is with McCaffrey. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, you're probably not going to have better options,
McCaffrey,
honestly.
I feel pretty comfortable about him scoring.
Yeah.
It's funny because I look at Football Guys projections. They're projecting him for 15.9 PPR points.
Even though he hasn't hit that in
he's going to hit outside of a couple standard deviations of his last 5 games.
Right,
Good luck with that.
My point is, if you're not playing Perine over him, if you're not playing Lynch over him, you're not playing Deion Lewis over him, I don't know if you have better options.
I'm playing Alex Collins over him. I'd play Collins.
Okay, well, I mean, that's
another guy in that same
ballpark. Yeah, but I guess I don't know how many people are going to have that luxury. So I would be more often than not trotting him out. You know how many shares of Kareem Hunt I had this year, Dave?
About as many as you have of Bitcoin?
Rhymes with bureau.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was totally pissed at myself, and now I'm quite happy.
By the way, if you bought $1,000 worth of Bitcoin in 2010 when it was 6 cents a piece, it'd now be worth $267 million.
This is why I did not want to get into this rabbit hole this late in the show. It's never ending.
No more comments on it.
And no more show. Thanks to Jannet Thomas-Dodds, Tom Wentzel, Dave Gerczak, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you. David Hubbard on Thursday's High Stakes Lowdown, along with @FantasyQB on Twitter, Dominic Lafieri, author of Fantasy Football Intelligence. It's going to be great to talk to him. Remember to register for the playoff challenge at myffpc.com. That's myffpc.com. Good luck in the championship round. Hopefully you didn't get Kamara on Thursday and you have the full lineup trotting out there on Sunday. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com that was broadcast live and heard around the world. Eric and Dave will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from a guest much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Big dogs stay on the court. Blow the whistle. Blow the whistle. Blow the whistle. Blow the whistle. Where you get that from?
I'll tell you this, Dave. If we end up doing the grandmother segment with Jan Thomas-Dodds, I'm not approaching her and her agent with a segment called the grandmother segment.
What
we
are you
need
gonna call it?
we need to come up with something. I'm putting it out to the listeners. We need
All
to
right.
figure it out.
I thought that was all right.
It's all right. It's not good enough to get the second place FPC team consistently on the show.
All right. Ask Mama.
It's on you, listeners. Ask Mom is actually not bad.